how I know that we're ready. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to go live on the cloud in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. Lots of knowledge is about to be dropped, so take out your pen and pad, get ready to take notes. I usually say don't multitask, but I know that our guest speaker has a lot to share today. So I want to go over some quick housekeeping rules to make sure we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. I love to start off these Chat and Learns by saying, seems like the world's on fire. Seems like this topic is key. If you are an active listener and that's the way you participate, great, more power to you. If you ever want to hop off of mute and share your voice, you are more than welcome and highly encouraged to do that. Otherwise, you can write in the chat has
I think Mariella is breaking up. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Hey, Stacia. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, Mariella, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're cutting off.
So Paloma, could we move forward then?
Sure. Let me get these slides since Mariella is sharing. But Stacia, I don't know if you'd like to. Oh, she dropped. Well, she should be joining in just a second. So Stacia, while I am searching for the presentation, I would love. Oh, there she is. Hi, Mariella.
Hello, sorry about that. It looks like my internet went out for a brief moment. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Loud and clear.
All right.
Okay. Paloma, we may just have a problem with Mariella.
Yeah, you just cut off again, Mariella. Let me pull the presentation. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, Paloma.
Yeah, Mariella, do you hear us?
I can hear you. Are you able to hear me? I'm sorry about this.
We're now able to hear you. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Paloma, can you be ready just in case the internet kicks me off for whatever reason? But this is an important conversation and we will not be stopped by technical glitches. So I just wanted to quickly go over this housekeeping rules so that you all feel comfortable in the next hour. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can write to me privately and I will keep your question or your reflection anonymous and bring that up to our guest speaker here. So briefly, I just want to introduce myself. I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace. Maybe I might bring some of our reflections to that standpoint, as I feel like we have a lot of room to grow there. And I would like to extend the invitation for you all to support the work that I'm doing at the Positive Force team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. You can sign up for our newsletter and stay in touch with all the great things we've got lined up there. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker. Stacia Morris is calling from Connecticut today. She's the author of Teen Money 101 and Teen Money 102 and the founder of Your Life Trek. She works to be a catalyst for improving the quality of life for women and families worldwide with the focus on financial literacy, financial and health wellness, coaching and mentoring. She also holds certifications for and currently works as a financial advisor. Stacia received both her post-MBA certificate in accounting and her MBA from Pace University in New York City and her BA from the University of the West Indies. So I would love to just pass the mic to our guest speaker. Can you go over some of the principal themes that you plan to cover today? And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you, full permission to screen share because I know you've got a beautiful presentation lined up for us.
Okay, so today we're going to unpack a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about skills to protect and preserve your dignity. Dignity is very, very important, and maintain your authentic self at all times. I'm going to talk about strategies that help me to maintain my dignity. And in today's world where we hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, during my life, and I share with you where I was, we heard a lot of diversity. Diversity is the mix of us. In equity, I'll come to equity next, but let's go to inclusion. Inclusion is being on the playing field, playing, being picked on a team to play. And then equity means the opportunity for promotion and for equitable salaries. So I'm going to talk about the skills that help me to preserve and protect my dignity and my authentic self. I think I'm the same person at work, at home, at church, with my friends, everywhere. My family members know that. So those are the themes for today.
Awesome. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Go ahead and share your screen, Stacia, and walk us through the beautiful presentation that you've got lined up for us today.
Okay, so today I am just going to talk about, I'm going to start with my introduction. And then I want to stop sharing the screen. And after I've introduced myself, I would come back and we talk about a couple of things. But to really set us up here today, why isn't my screen sharing from screen beginning? Okay, let's pass through a couple of things. I'm using a new laptop and it's doing some weird things to my. So I'm going to unpack for 5 minutes intro, then 10 minutes, I'm going to really give you some words and some situations. Then I'm going to do some scenarios. Hopefully that wouldn't take too long. Then I'm going to talk about price because I would have talked to Payne during the part 1 and part 2. And then we would have time for Q&A. So to my introduction, I really want to thank Power to Fly for having me on their platform again. This is the 3rd time. And I expect to be there again in September doing something else. And thank you everybody for coming out and listening to me. I am doing something. I am actually extending Father's Day for 5 days. So on this day, I want to dedicate my speech to my late father, Stanley Morris. And I'm actually dedicating to him. And as we go through this presentation, you'd realize that a lot of the groundings I got is because I grew up with a father who said, life is a battle. And also he loved history. His favorite battle was the Battle of Jutland, and people called him Jutland as a nickname. And his favorite politician was Winston Churchill. So I'll set you up because at the end, I'm going to ask you a question about what I just said, okay? So I've presented this presentation twice. Once to Westchester Community College on Martin Luther King's Day, and then at another a job place on Martin Luther King Day also. This was presented first in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s. And it's very, very relevant at this point in time. You would agree. So we're going to skip the poll because we want to run through time. But I just want to talk about this quote from Martin Luther King. And so my friends who are here, they would laugh, they'll smile. He says, we need to be tough-minded and tender-hearted. We need to avoid complacency and do nothingness. Ism. I never heard that one. So to tee me up here, I wanna let my friends and everybody who know me know I am tough-minded, but I'm tender-hearted. I am not complacent, I act, and I'm not bitter. So remember that, tender-hearted and tough-minded. That's what you get. So let's go into part 1 where I talk about some situations. So I want you to listen to me to situations. These are things I heard as I went through IBM. I heard things like, I heard people had to tell me the lay of the land. That's when I just joined IBM. People pointed out to me that team members had not gone to college and therefore, you know, everybody hadn't gone to college. Everybody doesn't pick up and go to Paris for a weekend. So I kind of needed to quiet down a bit. And I am gonna talk about color and race so that you get an idea that this stuff comes at us from all sources. So I'm going to a white guy who said to me, I am very driven for somebody from the Caribbean. Then a Black female said to me, I heard that you began life at IBM as a secretary. That's why you're so nice to secretaries. Now, why do we all have to start as secretaries when we started as professionals? We heard from all of us. A Black woman exec at IBM Credit, some of my management thought I should go meet with other Black executives and they would help me to grow. So I went to meet with this lady. And I should tell you, I have a wrong desk now. I just brought this in because she was sitting at a wrong desk and she bumped as she spoke to me. And she said, "You are doing quite well." So here was I, coming from the Caribbean, doing a master's degree, doing a postmaster's degree, working hard, trying to get better. And my own people are telling me, forget it, stay where you are. The other one is I went to California to bring back some leasing businesses for the company. And the Indian CFO looked at me and she said, "Whose admin assistant are you?" Now, I went to bring back the business, to understand the business and integrate it. But she, as she met me, she just pushed me down. Then I had a white male who said to me on the job, "Do you have any college?" Then another one said to me, as I was rolling out some education for stuff I had done, he said to me, "I want to meet the person who developed these methodologies." Obviously, couldn't be me. Then I got promoted to a certain level, and a Jewish friend of mine said to me, "You should rest now." Another Black female colleague said, "Why don't you calm down and stop rocking the boat?" Then I was in an area where somebody should have taught me, a Jewish woman should have taught me the methodologies. And she said to me, "You're quite bright enough to figure it out." And I tell you, as I unpack, how I figured stuff out. Then another one said, oh, this is a good one. "I literally worked my butt off, bringing together a lot of work late at nights, etc. We had a celebration for the project. And naturally, knowing me, the ones here who know me, I went to the head of the table. I led this project. I need to sit at the head of the table. Somebody came to me and said, "Shouldn't you leave the head of the table for the executives?" Well, people who know me know where I stayed. Then another Black female executive said to me one day as I was talking about my career, she said to me, "There are not many white men out there who want to adopt a Black child." Meaning, stop, you're not going anywhere. You're going to the top of the non-executive, you're not going anywhere. One white woman executive said to me as we were talking about my career, she said, "You only see Black and white. You don't see grays." I don't see grays. I refuse to, I know right and wrong. I refuse to see the middle path. Then, this will surprise my siblings who are listening because they never heard this one. I was talking to a white woman, a manager, about my career again, and she's standing on my desk and she looked at my pictures on my desk and she said, "But I thought you were much older." Meaning, why should you want to go anywhere? I thought you were much older. And she looked at my sister's pictures on my desk. Now, sisters, if you're listening to me, my two younger sisters' pictures went home that day. But I think it was already done. I was in my early 30s when this woman thought I had teenagers and people in their 20s. So why bother? Then another guy on a team I led, he told me one day how difficult it was being a short white guy in IBM. Well, hello, look at who you're talking to. Then a white female business manager said to me, "Why aren't you a manager?" When I gave her the answer, I said, "Because I'm Black." Well, she turned all colors. Then on a daily basis, and as I said, I'm bringing out race and everything, so you see it comes from Blacks, white, Jews, everybody. I sat in an area, and I tell you how I got to the area, and this Jewish woman would come by every day, and she'd go around, and she'd say, "Lunch, lunch." lunch. Never once was I invited to lunch. Okay? I shouldn't say that. I was invited by one Canadian guy who just invited me because he wanted to tap my brain, but that was the only time. So I'm unpacking. I still have a bit. I wouldn't go too long with this unpacking, but you guys are getting the idea. Having lunch one day, we had a department lunch, and a white guy said to me, "You behave like a prima donna." People who know me know what my name means, and I love behaving like that. Another guy said to me, "I suppose you party every weekend." Oh, people who know me know how much I party. Then another lady popped into an office. I was presented to my director, and she popped in and she said, "I don't agree with Stacia's approach." Now, she could have come over and tell me that we're on the same team. She waited until I was presented to the director. Then I'm going to link these two together. I went to a marketing class. I was support side, not marketing. And the woman who was running the marketing class, she said to me, "Well, I think you should come back just in case we have space." Then another one invited me to her office. I happened to have the quote unquote pleasure of working for that woman. She invited me to the office, and somebody else was in her office, and she had the person step across the door and close the door in my face. Now, that one, the secretary who's outside said, "I can't believe she did that." And on this one, I could have gone to HR and I could have shouted and screamed and whatever. But as happens in life, God does not like ugly. These two ladies who I just mentioned, they were walked out of the company for cheating financially. So bear up. This is a good one. A Brazilian colleague said to me, "You have 3 strikes against you." Now I thought I had 2. The 3 were, I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I speak funny. I speak the Queen's English like a British Caribbean person. Another Latin American guy, and yes, I got this too, he asked me where was the coffee. And then a guy in Chile, he looked at me and he looked at the Brazilian lady who was with me, and he said in Spanish, "I'm not going to listen to her. When she leaves, I'm going to do what I want to do." He didn't realize that I knew enough Spanish to understand him. He was fired quickly after. So these were some of the things that happened that were said to me. So I'm going to skip out a couple of them. And I'm just going to go to the one I want to end with. Because though on a daily basis, you're going to be faced with everybody coming at you, I want to end with this one. My siblings, 2 sister siblings, the ones whose pictures I took home, they came to visit me on the job. And on that office, there was a swirling staircase. And I came down that staircase. And my sister said to me, "You walk as if you own this place." And my response was, "Yes, I own this place. I work here 12-hour days minimum. I do a lot of stuff. I own this place." So I've unpacked a lot of stuff. So after unpacking this, I want to go to a couple scenarios. So 3 scenarios I'll quickly unpack. One I call unwelcome companions. The other is surprises. And then I call this one strangers in the dark. Let me stop sharing a bit because I want you to see as I unpack this stuff. The first one, and I'm saying where I work because people can go look at my LinkedIn, etc. You know where I work. I worked at IBM Credit Corp, and I was in charge of the state and local business. There was a big meeting in Canada, Alberta, Canada, and I was going to present. However, some executives decided that I needed a male white companion. Didn't need the guy. The guy was new to the business. He wasn't going to be backing me up as a state and local person, but they sent the guy in to keep me company. And we all know why. The next unwanted companion, to go into that event, I had to go to Toronto, pick up a flight, etc. And I ran through the airport. Got to the where I was going. I was going to the Calgary Olympics village. Checked in, went into the shower, because I was so sweaty from running all over the airports. As I came out of the shower, I ran straight into a white guy. They had put me to share with 3 guys. My name is Stacia. Nobody bothered to find out that I was not a guy. But it ended up well. I got my own condominium. So I had those unwelcome companions. That one, the next one I wanna spend some time on. And I called it surprises. Lots of surprises here. I kept this comment for this section. Got a comment from a guy who turned out to be one of my biggest sponsors, really, and I'm going to talk about sponsorships. But before we started working, he invited me into his office and he said to me, even though you didn't go to an Ivy League school, we know you can do the job. So I had that sponsor. And remember, people, remember everybody, I was an athlete. I ran track. You don't set me up like that. So what they set me up to do was really to work my butt off, work hard, and achieve. So I went into the job. We heard a lot of stuff from him. We were very honest with each other. This was one of the most honest persons I work with at IBM. He told me, you carry your color on your sleeve. I told him, you make me do it. Then he said, you are too aloof. I had no comeback for that. But then he said, you're too aggressive. And I'm like, no, I'm assertive, because other people you call assertive, me, you call aggressive. Another day, he called me into his office and he said, why do you treat me differently than the other Blacks on the team? Now, we expected to be alike, everybody? No. So I gave him a bit of history. I gave him a bit of background, because we all have different backgrounds. We're different people. We need different things on the job. Every time he asked me to do something, I would ask him, why? I'm your analyst. You got to tell me why before I do the job for you. So that was one surprise with the guy. The other surprise, and here's something I did. Every time I got promoted, I immediately asked for the job description of the next level. And I had an 18-month plan. So about 18 years of IBM, over 20 years, I had like nearly 10 different jobs. I got an early promotion from the same guy. And I'm like, this doesn't happen. I'm ready to, by July, I'm going to start fighting. I'm going to start asking in July. It happened in April before I can go start fighting. I'm promoted. Something doesn't sound or smell right. I asked him why, and he was honest enough to tell me. They were bringing in another person, female, into the group, not a Black woman, but female, into the group, and they were bringing her in at a higher level than my current level, even though she hadn't had decent background. So I was pleased. I had really talked enough. I had sensitized people to the fact that, hey, you don't treat me badly. And it shows. Well, of course, you get treated badly because you don't get the full salaries, etc. But what they can get away with, they get away with. But I had them on point and I was promoted. So that was a surprise. Another surprise is coming up, and I'm going to wrap this one up pretty soon. But this was my most experience, and this was really, I enjoyed myself. Even though all this stuff was happening, I still enjoyed myself. Now, one day, the same manager came zipping down the hall, and he told me I was going to get a job in another area where there were no Blacks, no Black women, and this was the deal structuring area I was going to be moved to. And they wanted to announce it the next day. The director wanted to announce it the next day. Big thing, want to announce. I said, no. Why? Why don't you want this announced? Where am I going to sit? Now, I sat in a cubicle, lovely cubicle, overlooking the Sound in Stamford, Connecticut. But the other deal structures sat in offices with windows on the other side. Now, if you're going to promote me into this space, I need the relevant space. So I said, you can't announce. I need an office. He said, well, we can't find an office by tomorrow. Well, then you don't announce. I used to be stressed out in the job, but I went to a stress class which said, take your stress and push it back where it belonged. That day, I took the stress and I gave it back. Next morning, I'm at work and I went into work early at 7. And there's the manager zipping down the hall coming to see me. We got you an office. Great. I said, you can announce before I saw the office. When I went to see the office after, they cleared out a copier room. It had 4 walls and a door, 0 windows. I asked for an office. I didn't say it had to have windows. So I sat in that office. And as I sat in that office, I watched people come in strategically placed and move into window offices. Meanwhile, I sat in my windowless, but I made a plan. This was the plan. I was going on vacation to the Bahamas, I remember, for 2 weeks. I usually work late most nights. So Friday, before vacation, I made sure I was the last person on the floor. I packed up everything because I had asked for a director's office down the hall. Nobody said yes, nobody said no. No would get Stacia very upset. Yes would jump me into an office that wasn't at my level. I wasn't at that level. So I decided to move. So if you remember the old PS2 and those old IBM computers, I put them on my chair. I rolled my computer up to the office. I rolled my books. I rolled everything. I put my name tag outside the door. And then the last thing I unpacked too. I unpacked everything after I'd moved. And the last thing I did, I went to the secretarial bay and I put my name in ink on her chat. I zipped off on vacation. Now, I know I can be brash and take over, do that stuff. I'm going to work the morning, I come back and it's like, oh my God, where am I going to be sitting? Because if they had moved me out, I would not have been surprised. I got back to the office and I was still there. I sat in that office for 3.5 years. Now, I wouldn't call it squatting. I would say I was an inhabitant of that office for 3.5 years. And at the end of 3.5 years, I decided my career needed to see international. And I wanted Paris, but they gave me Latin America. So I ended up, Mariela, I spent a lot of time in Argentina. My best place was Rio de Janeiro. So that's the third story of that's the third story, my third story. I think I have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to talk about scenario 3. Scenario 3 happened in 2019. And everything that happened to me ages ago in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, I was just amazed that the world had not changed. Here I was working for an investment company as a financial advisor, and the resident director never bothered to say, who are you, where are you from, what do you do, what do you know? So one day I went to a municipal bond offering that a guy came in to sell his bond offerings. And this one is going to be sad because the managing director saw me later after the presentation and he literally apologized that I did not understand what the guy was talking about. Now, here was from the little snippet I've given you guys. I managed at one time IBM state and local and federal business. I know what municipal bonds and municipal indexes. If that managing director had taken the time to find out who I was and what was my background, he would have known what I know. Instead of that, he came over and apologized that I didn't understand. Now, at this stage, you say, what would I do? What did I do? Now, the usual normal me would go and probably grab the guy and say, shake him up and say, that's so stupid. You should have called me. You should talk. But I didn't. I said, let me let this one go. Let him stew in his ignorance, really. I had learned by then to fight my battles. And this battle, it was ingrained. It's ingrained in you when you look at a Black person and a Black woman and you'd say, she doesn't know, because you didn't find time to find out. So I call this one strangers in the dark, and the pun and dark and strangers. So that in a nutshell is some of my stories, some of my packing, telling you guys what I went through. experiences. And by the way, as I went through this stuff and remembered, there's so much stuff I started writing down. So I don't think everybody heard, but the book is coming. So after talking about my pain, and I know we have all been stereotyped, either we have been, and it's natural. We see people and we stereotype them too. So I just take it for granted that you could just figure and understand where I came from, where I'm coming from. I'm going to talk about the price, and then I'm going to talk to you about situations, how I maintain my dignity. Still a dignified woman here. So I'm going back to my chats. I'm going to share again. So let's go to a couple. Let's move down a couple here. And okay, I didn't tell it to. Oh, I should have said from the current slide. Okay, so I gave you those scenarios. And let's go. Pain. I talked about pain. Maybe I didn't sound too painful, but it was painful. You know, especially to a proud woman to be going through this stuff. And I came from the Caribbean not expecting this stuff. So my pain is, as I just discussed. I'm gonna talk now about price. Now, can we put a price on consistent and persistent pain? I don't think we can put a price. Now, I did a lot of financial modeling, you know, in my life. So if you want to ask me how I can put a price on all the agony I went through for 18 and a half years at you know where I was underpaid, it's impacted my retirement fund, impacted my social security fund. We know minorities, women of color, we make 54 cents on the dollar for every white guy. I mean, I can put a price on this. I can literally sit down and put a financial price. You add for inflation, you add for pain and injury, and you know, you can come up with a price. So here, the next one, physical and mental health. Now, during this pandemic, I was surprised when I listened to this sociologist who is at, I think he's at Harvard. He said racism is having the devastating effects on Black Americans' physical and mental health. His name is David Williams, and he happened to be from the Caribbean, from our neighboring island, St. Lucia. And we wonder, physical health, it's high blood pressure, it's different cholesterol, it's you name it, and we got it. So if you're interested, look at that presentation. The next one I have is, before I go on to mental health, I should tell you about my personal health and my personal experience once. One day, very late in the evening, I was driving home after doing my 12-hour shift when I should have really worked 8 hours. And I was making a left turn and I didn't see that blue car coming towards me. Thank God the driver saw. So I'm alive and well now. The other thing, while at work one day, I literally blanked out. I had to be driven home for the weekend. I didn't have 2 consecutive thoughts. So for somebody who's always doing something, I just did nothing for a weekend. Well, when I went back to work, and the same manager who was one of my best sponsors, we had a chat. The project I was on was very important. So anytime I felt stressed out, I would go to the gym. And on Fridays, he understood this well. I'd go play tennis on Fridays before I went into work. So we have to make adjustments for whatever is happening in our lives. Then when we get to the mental one, what's the price of this? What's the price of being the only Black person, Black woman in a room? As you're promoted upwards, you're the only one. And recently I've been hearing this, the imposter syndrome. I should tell you, I never felt like an imposter. I was lonely, yes. I was the only one, yes. Some people say I have a big mouth, but I learned to, and I tell you one thing I should have done when I gave the tips. But the other pressure was that you felt as the only one, you always have to speak up. Now, what does that do to you on an ongoing basis? So the next one is, after mental health, spiritual health. Again, there's no price. But we have to build up our spiritual base, whatever you believe in. And I talk to you about how I got ready to go to work every day spiritually, because that's really biggie, how I survived. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is my survival. And it's my background. I tell everybody I started, I had the best parents in the world. My dad got me ready. He literally got me ready for IBM Credit Corp because he said life was a battle. These people who I was working with had not a clue that I grew up hearing life is a battle. I was an athlete, a 100-meter athlete. Athletes have to win. I didn't do this teamy thing beginning life. I learned to team after, and people will be surprised. I'm the second sibling in a 7-sibling family, but we all did our own thing. So, we team, yes, but it's me, So my background, and I learned to be very resilient. Then I had a support system, siblings and friends, really good friends, supportive colleagues. Then I educate myself all the time. I'm a continuous learner. During this pandemic, I listened to so many webinars, and everything I listen to, I get some snippets. For example, this week, I listened to Black Enterprise talking about diversity and inclusion and equity. And I have something, I don't know if I wrote it down here, with a lot of statistics that was unpacked at that webinar. So that gave me and highlighted my stuff that I had put here already. So cheerleader, I am my biggest cheerleader. I pat myself on the back. If you don't cheerlead yourself and tell everybody else how good you are, etc., who's going to cheerlead for you? Your colleagues who are jostling with you for positioning? No, you got to cheerlead, and you got to be known for something. I was known for knowing IT because I've been a programmer. I had the accounting, I could do spreadsheets, and I was known for making all out the chaos. So be known for something. And you must have a sponsor or a champion. The biggest jobs I did at IBM was because I had 2 sponsors. And when I heard that what my sponsor had retired, I kind of got scared then at that time. But you have to have sponsors. And my sponsors were 2 white men, 1 Irish guy and 1 Wasp guy. They were my sponsors. And you have to be creative and solution oriented. Remember that lady who said I was bright enough to figure it out when she refused to train me? I got the programmer to sit with me. I got copies of the code that I read, and I got the spreadsheets that I just worked backwards and found out everything. You wouldn't tell me directly, I'm going to find it out. And be intentional and focused and strategic. You got to know what you want, and you got to tell people what you want, and you have to take risk. Sign up for risky projects. I did. Speak up. Oh yeah, I spoke a lot. I spoke a lot so that some people seeing me would see their conscience coming towards them. And people don't like to see their consciences. And you have to daily confirm yourself. And I tell you how I did that. No limits. Just have no limits, set expectations, and tell everybody your expectation. I needed to be promoted every 18 months or so. So first 6 months, I do the job, learn the job. Second 6 months, I want to sparkle in the job. Third 6 months, I want you to move me out and promote me out. So that was my modus operandi. And I worked hard and I had fun. You'd say, how do you have fun with people blasting all the stuff in your ears? You got to know who you are, and you got to be authentic, and you have to say, okay, if this is the price I pay. But I was really ready for the price that I paid because, as I said, because of my background. So some tips are, and I took tips from what I just said, be resilient, have a support system. If you don't have your own family and friends, go find some, go network, learn all the time. You have to know as much as you could. And I'll give you a quick example. One day I was in a meeting talking about stocks, municipal index and municipal stocks. I had not a clue, but nobody in the meeting room knew I had not a clue. I went on my way home, I stopped in at the Greenwich Library, one of the best libraries, and I picked up the book on municipal index bonds. I turned it over, and the book was actually written by the father of one of my nephew's school friends. I got home, I got the book, I got home, and I called up the guy. I apologized for interrupting dinner, but I really need to speak that night because I had a 7 o'clock meeting. And he gave me a quick rundown on what I should know. By the next day, I knew all the players. You would have think that I had been playing in this thing for a while. I didn't. But you have to learn. You got to go get the education, go find it wherever. Find a consistent sponsor, creative solutions, be intentional, be risky, you gotta speak up. You have to speak up. And daily confirm yourself, set no limits. One big thing here that I didn't do that I want to tell the audience is, please, please take a psychology course. Please. I came here as a brash British person, and I would go and I would say, you have racism in your group, you're discriminating, you're this, you're that, you're that. I worked for a woman who was a psychologist before she became a lawyer, and she would go in and she'd say, no, help me understand. Tell me why you did this. You know, so go take a psychology course. I still have to take mine. I haven't taken one yet, but I learned, instead of me coming and aggressively attacking and say this, take a psychology course. Something I want to highlight here too is to have a colleague who understands you and who you respect. I had a colleague, and I can't forget this colleague. Whenever I got upset in the job, I would go to his office, and when he sees me coming, he would know automatically to get up, because we are going to take a walk around the sun. I am upset. We're going to talk it through. He was very rational, and whatever he says, okay, Stacia, you're playing this out of the water, you're making it bigger than it is, I would go back into the office and deal with it based on his counseling. So, and this guy, because I've been telling everybody race and everything, this guy happened to be a Chinese guy. Very lucky, he didn't fight for himself, but he was the person that I would go to whenever I felt I was disrespected, or people were attacking me, or didn't give me what I expected, etc. I would go talk to this guy. So have your go-to person who you trust. In conclusion, instead of blowing in the wind, I want to tell you, I'm like an olive tree. I am not blowing in the wind. And if you put songs to me, it would be I Will Survive, and I'm still standing. And next, I want to say, I'm standing based on my family life. My dad, battle. My mom, she expected the highest delivery. My siblings helped me with my wings to fly. Being an athlete, I had to win. Educating myself, I could do all things. And my faith, last but not least, took me through a lot of battles. I want to also say, come back to Martin Luther King, tough-minded, tender-hearted. I am not complacent, and I do not do nothing. I do stuff. I talk. I see stuff and I talk. So we're going to do some polls. We're going to skip the polls. We're going to go to Q&A now. So Mariella?
Yes, thank you so much. Wow, I just want to say thank you for sharing so much of your journey. I know it's not easy to, reflect or share those painful points that you experienced in your life, but I think it's important for visibility's sake, so folks know that if this is happening in their work life, that they are not alone, and you have so much energy, positive energy to share on how to navigate those murky waters. So just first off, thank you so much. We've got some comments as well. Fearlessly speak truth to power. Great story on taking initiative and being resourceful to learn enough to be dangerous on investing in municipal bonds. So you speak a lot about microaggressions in the workplace. This is a topic that we talk about a lot on at Power to Fly on the Chat and Learn program. This question that someone has submitted previous to the conversation, I would love to know if you are here live with us when you hear this question, so that we can just make sure if you have any new questions that have come up as Stacia has presented this background of her story. We'd love to hear from you. So Stacia, this question reads, how can allies help address microaggressions when they witness them? What about tips for the people who are targets of microaggressions themselves?
So I would say that if you're an ally, you need to speak up. And you'd hear Mariella and everybody who's listening to me. One thing I'd always say, you got to speak up. Nothing happens if you don't address it immediately. You don't go back the next day and say, oh, by the way, you said that yesterday. No, if you're comfortable and it's in a group that this person is being disrespected, you got to speak up. So I would say, always speak up. And the person who is being addressed, again, you got to speak up. How do people know how you feel? Most of these things, and I didn't mention, I skipped by a lot of them. There's so much. And this was just one company. I mean, every other company got worse, seriously. So this company, and I'd say good company, bad people, bad, you just continue whoever started, you just continue the bad behavior. So you really have to stop the bad behavior, and you have to speak up. I have visited people in their office, and this is one thing I got in the 90s from Working Women's Magazine, that if somebody disrespects you and don't invite them to your office, because you invite them to your office, they can stay and hang out. You go to their office, you tell them off, and you leave. I did that quite a bit. And the sad thing that I read is that this is so many years later, I can see every one of their faces for all these stories and much more.
So we've got the chat boxes lighting up here. Donna writes, "Great job, Stacia. Your perseverance is so admirable." And Eileen writes, "Often the assumption is that if there are women or people of color in leadership, that they will offer support, but there is not a lot of evidence that it actually occurs." Would you like to comment on some of these chat comments?
Yes, this is touchy. When I worked for IBM, if I saw a Black woman manager coming towards me or being my manager, I would run. Seriously, people might get upset at that, but that's been my experience. I was told, be comfortable. I was told, you don't have a godfather. Others said nothing. It's like, and this was the time, and I listened to Carla Harris this week, and these were the times when could only be one of us. So whenever the one of us got the one position, it was like, no. So we did not speak up for each other. I wanted, when I became a manager, to be the best manager for everybody. And I actually had to leave IBM. I got the program manager's title. I had to leave IBM to get the manager's title and then come back to IBM with that title. So, answer to my question, we don't stand up, we don't mentor, and that's why I'm on this bandwagon of mentoring people to be better, to be their better selves.
Can you speak a little bit more about the importance of sponsorship and mentorship, especially, in the corporate space? Just because, as you mentioned, historically speaking, tokenism was a couple years ago and happening right now with all of the DEI initiatives that folks are doing now with their organizations. Tokenism is real. How can you just speak about, maybe first steps on seeking mentorship or sponsorship if someone is not aware on how to do that?
Yeah, and the thing is, how do you do that? For me, it took years, and everything I'm hearing now is that all the pundits are saying, and I heard a young guy yesterday, he's a spacecraft company, and he was lucky. He was one of the few who, when he got to that company, he was mentored immediately and put into a pipeline. The rest of us, we get to companies and we are just floating and fighting our way to figure out where to go. We don't have somebody who would say, this is the path. These are what you're interested in. This is the thing you're interested in. This is the opportunity open to you. We don't have that opportunity open to us. Maybe we can go to HR now with DE&I. This might be available, and they have diversity directors and people in positions, vice presidents, etc. To today with big corporations might try to make that happen. And it would be great if you can have consistent sponsorship. And sponsorship is the person who is behind the door when executives meet at 7 p.m. in the night and they said, who are we going to put on this key project? I was blessed that I was put on a key project because I understood IT and I understood accounting and I did modeling with this guy. This guy was my best manager. He became one of my sponsors in the back room. He had a PhD in economics. I had a first degree in economics. He taught me how to think again in equations. And I just love working with the guy, even though he's the one who said, I carry my color on my sleeve or whatever. But he was very authentic. He was very open, probably too open, because he told me stuff he shouldn't have told, But you need sponsorship. You need a person who say, I know the skills. And to get sponsorships, you have to get relationships first. And this was really pushed by Black Enterprise recently. I play tennis on Fridays and during the week with some white, Jewish lawyers, Black, IT managers, etc. That's where you get to meet people and you get to bond. So they get to know you. So when you sit across a room, it's not just this person, but it's this person I know. And That's what where we need to get. We need to get mentorship, and mentor is different from sponsor. Mentor is a person like my colleague who would say, you did this wrong. This is what you should do. Don't be upset. Next thing. But I had to be really, a lot of times I had to be my own mentor. I'd go home and my siblings would laugh at me. I'd go home and tell my parents that, I just got promoted and I got the job description for the next level. And my mother would say, well, whose child are you? Because why are you so aggressive? But you have to be. So there's a fine line, and you have to find that fine balance. But you need a mentor and you need a sponsor.
Yes, yes, I agree. Sponsorship is key, especially to help elevate voices that are being underheard or underserved or just not acknowledged in general. So I love that you're highlighting that. We have a quick question here in the chat box. Given reported findings and disparities, companies have increased their D&I recruitment. However, they continue to report talent pipeline challenges. What are recommended strategies for diverse candidates to elevate their visibility to engagement in these D&I recruitment initiatives? For example, direct interface with D&I staff, employee resource groups, hiring managers versus recruiters, resume profile content, etc.
This is a tough one, and I'm being honest. I literally sat in listening to an American Express and a Wachovia D&I executive this week, same Black Enterprise thing, but I didn't listen in detail, and I don't think any of them talked about the pipeline and where they're getting pipelines. But I tell you something else that's happening, and I'm not sure if this is going to answer the question. I may ask you to repeat the question when I'm done, Mariela. But a lot of companies are forming relationships with high schools and colleges and to start a pipeline. For example, in Norwalk, and you guys would laugh because here am I saying all the things about IBM, but IBM started something with the Norwalk High School, where when the kids graduate from high school, they have the first year community college, and they may have internships with IBM. And actually, you say I can spotlight my stuff. I wrote a book called Teen Money 101, and I just took 100 of those books to the IBM place. So, and another 100 is going there. So it's just funny. But a lot of the companies today are making alignments with high schools and colleges, etc., to start getting pipelines.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Eileen, that was your question. Let us know if you want Stacia to dive in deeper there. If she was able to answer that question, you can just write in the chat box or you can hop off mute. We've got about 5 minutes left. So until I hear from Eileen, I'd love to move on to this next question here. What suggestions do you have for those of us in corporate environments today?
Suggestions would be a lot of the tips I gave you. You got to still be self-reliant. You can't expect somebody to come and pick you out and say, okay, here am I going to lead you along and this is your track. You got to talk. You got to look at your skills and your interests. And I know we had a question about somebody talking about their authentic self versus the career path. But you have to look at who you are. And I mean, you can't go being somebody today and somebody else tomorrow. You got to be your consistent, persistent self. And you got to know what you bring to the table. Do I bring IT? Do I bring business skills? What do I bring to the table? And what's the path? And I would say if the path isn't with that company that you're with, a lot of companies, like you say, Mariela, are looking for pipeline, are looking for people. And for pipeline, I'd say start networking, start LinkedIn, start going to networking events, start just talking to everybody, because you never know who knows who.
Great. And then another question here, how can we better assess and avoid toxic work environments in the future?
Well, you don't know if it's toxic until you get there. And I tell you, IBM, out of all the places I've worked, I would say I just downloaded a lot on IBM, but IBM has as their tenet, respect for the individual. You go to a lot of other companies that don't have that. I mean, I've been to companies that I was a general manager for a law firm, and I thought I was on a Caribbean slave plantation. Seriously. And I was at the top. I was a general manager. I stayed there for 6 months. So toxic exists. You just, as I said, you just have to know what your hot points are and if you're going to stay there. And if it's too toxic, you leave. And like I say, you have your spiritual base. I talked to you about a couple of things I did.
So for those who don't have, that that really key, let's say, resiliency that you have worked, uh, subconsciously, even because you say that you were blessed enough to have parents and a family who supported you to be your authentic self, to be your best self. For those people who might not have that kind of support, but they are looking to be resilient, in the case that they can be financially literate, they can make sure that they are moving up in their careers and not being held back because of racism, sexism, all of that. How can someone learn to be resilient in a way that it doesn't harm them or anyone else?
Why do you give me these tough questions at the end of an hour? How do you learn resilience? I don't know. I'd say go take a boxing class, but no, that's funny. I'd say surround yourself, find some positive people, ask people to be your mentor. For example, I've done a lot of webinars with the University of the West Indies recently, and I may have some people on here from there. And one lady, before I could finish talking, she sent me a note and she said, God said you're going to be my mentor. Well, how can I go against what God said to her? So I'm her mentor today in Jamaica. We talk every 2 weeks or so. Find somebody who would be the person who would help to prop you up, because we all need to be propped up. I prop myself up a lot, but I have a lot of props. I have good friends. I see a lot of friends' names on here. I have good friends who would tell me as it is, who would support me, So find a mentor.
I love that. So we have a comment here. We've got about 2 more minutes. So I appreciate you diving into that really tough question, Stacia, but I knew you could handle it. So here's a question here. Is there something you wish you knew before entering the workforce here in the US that would have equipped you better?
I think I was well equipped. I think my track in I came here to do a master's degree at Pace University, and at Pace University in Westchester area, I had adjunct professors who I got a job from IBM. I actually had 4 job offers and I never applied. That's because my adjunct professor just went back, tell people about me, and I got hired. And they were looking for anybody, Black, woman, IT in those days. And then I went back again to Pace to do my post-MBA in accounting, because that's what I planned to promise myself I'd do when I came to the US. And doing accounting, another Pace adjunct professor, he was in charge of the worldwide systems. And the guy hired me out of being IT. He knew I wanted business system, and he hired me. So I don't know if there was anything, well, something, if I had known something else, and that's very personal, I wouldn't talk about it, but that would have changed my course. But my course was what it was. Everywhere I've been, I've met a lot of great people, a lot of great supporters. Yes, I was told all these stupid things, and these stupid things can get to you, and the way people can handle you. One thing I didn't mention that I should mention, when I worked for IBM, I had a guy on my team, the guy who said what it is to be a short white guy, and my management was not sensitive to the fact that I should not see everybody's salaries. I knew how to do spreadsheeting, and we were changing to salesmen on compensation. They gave me everybody's salary to put into a spreadsheet that I built for them. And I saw that this guy made $20,000 more than I did. He was a complainer, he was a crier. I was running the project. I should not have seen that. But by seeing that, I went to see management. And some of my diverse friends said to me later, oh, we got a salary increase that we didn't expect, because I went to see management, because stupid things like that should not happen. So just a lot of stuff that I plan to unpack in my book. Hopefully I can get to writing it.
Yes. Oh, as soon as you do, you let us know. Stacia, time has flown by. I've learned a lot about your journey, and I hope that folks who are listening live will connect with Stacia. Let us know how we can connect with you when we finish this conversation.
Okay, sure. So I have one other thing to say. Now, you heard me say that my dad taught us life was a battle. Winston Churchill was his favorite warrior. I want the audience to just nod or whatever, but I think after what I just walked you through, I should be, if my dad was alive today, I would be his favorite warrior.
Yes, I agree. 1000%. No doubt about it. Your energy is palpable. I'm so happy to have been in this conversation with you. And good luck with that book. Let us know when it's available. We'll be connecting with you offline. Folks are writing in the chat box. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's been very helpful. So we'll see you all on the next Chat and Learn. Stacia, any words that you want to leave us with before we end?
Yeah, the words I want to leave you with is, and a couple of things before we end. I want to say, and I see my nephews on here. I took my nephew to school every day for 8 years. And on my way to school every day, I played, I told you I got ready for work. So I played songs like One Day at a Time, I Will Rise Again, Amen and Amen. Then I played a song, Temporary Pain. For 3 years, I was on a project that should have lasted 6 months. So temporary pain. So I got myself ready for work spiritually. And it's not until recently I got a text from my nephew which said he was replaying those songs in his head as he dropped his stepdaughters to school. And I'm like, I didn't realize you were listening. So I hope that whatever I did just motivated him and he didn't say, what's wrong with this lady? You know? So the words I want to say is motivate yourself, get ready every day and be your authentic self. People who like you would love you if you're your authentic self and you're fair and you're soft-hearted, but hard-minded. Tender-hearted, be yourself.
Yes. Yes, what a beautiful way to end this conversation. I love that you're taking us out with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you, Stacia. Thank you, everyone who's joined this chat for the past hour. And we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn.